So, what is the impression about how things are playing themselves out, and what do we expect from what we've seen so far? Could that be an indication of what's to happen from 10 a.m. up until 4 p.m. today? We'll find out. Let's head to Abuja. Makwe?
Thank you, Chamberlain. Joining us right now is Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, who is Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to ask you whether it's turned out a pleasant surprise for you in terms of how things have turned out in Anambra State. And I say that with regards to the conduct of the elections.
Oh, yes. Very good news there at several levels. The parties, all of them, conducted themselves with dignity. There were no riots.
The parties?
The political parties. There were no disruptions that were seen to be sponsored by any of the political parties. The electorate turned out. Initially, the concern, strong fear was that people will not turn out, partly because of the IPOB threat, and also partly because there was even suspicion of apathy. Lo and behold, the threat was withdrawn, or the sit-at-home presumed order, and people turned out. And let us put it on record, INEC made available materials in good time. The initial fear that the materials might be taken to Imo State or was going to come from there and all of that, all those things disappeared. So in terms of INEC conduct, actually the conduct gives us hope for 2023, if that will come. As for the equipment that eventually had problems, those are technology-related problems which cannot be blamed on the user. If my phone, there's a glitch and I can't send a text message, it doesn't mean I didn't intend to. And you see, the organization very quickly rose to the occasion, proposed a new date. And so, ordinarily in the past, INEC would have been accused of mischief by extending it to one day. How come everybody is so calm and confident and relaxed? It must mean that the organization has garnered enough confidence to warrant the faith now reposed in it by the people of Anambra State. So, on the cards, it looks very good.
Were you in Anambra over the weekend?
No. I had a program at Defense Headquarters. I couldn't escape that. By the time you finish on Friday, you can't fly. And these issues of national security, if you like.
Mm-hmm. But you were monitoring very closely.
Very closely. Anambra is my state.
Indeed.
And I have every reason to rejoice because the candidates, the two major candidates that are on the front row, any of them as the governor of Anambra State will be a blessing to the state. Capacity, international exposure, they're going to bring in new paradigms. And there are not people who would like to fail. You don't imagine Soludo will get into anything and want to do badly. No, he will pull down the wall.
Well, some people
will want to maintain his brand.
Some people will say that it's early days yet to call a winner. I mean, because we're yet to, how will I put it now, we're yet to conduct elections in Ihiala. And you see the optimism that all of the candidates are going to the polls with. Look at how the papers are even reported, and leadership has this one. APC, PDP, bank on 148,000 Ihiala voters to overturn Soludo's lead. So anything is still possible.
Yes. First, I'm not calling results. I'm not INEC. I'm saying that the candidates themselves, particularly one or two or three of them on the front
Usually when they call the front leaders, they call about 4 parties.
Yes. There's a lot of excitement in terms of the caliber. When you use the following criteria, you know, personal history, performance in public office, academic standing, leaning towards, if you like, good governance, international exposure. So we're likely to end up with a governor that will set new paradigms. And then some people like us will go home more regularly.
There have been questions as to why it was impossible almost to conduct elections in Ihiala. Does it speak to the fact that security wasn't, well, we have hailed the security agencies. We've also praised the people for maintaining the peace as well. But, you know, there are huge questions, a big question mark on why Ihiala was an exception to where elections could be conducted.
Yes, I've also tried to look into that. Quite frankly, all the answers one can speak of are largely speculative. The issue on the table right now is that elections didn't hold, or certain things that should have happened in Ihiala didn't. That would have led to riots and people talking about being disenfranchised. It didn't happen. That would have led to one candidate or more, or the parties themselves, declaring all sorts of things. It didn't happen. The good news is that election is going to take place. All stakeholders are waiting for it. It might There's the assumption that it will overturn, what do you call it, the readings at the moment if it goes one way or the other. But see the scenario I see. All the players are now in the same pitch. So it's not Ihiala and Niocha, Njikok and the rest of it. It's just one local government. They say there's 148,000 votes. Fine. No one person is going to walk away with that 148,000 votes. So whoever has the highest collective, cumulative number of votes is going to get at least one extra vote. And that means the lower the votes with which you're going to Ihiala, the lower your chances of picking it. But even if you pick the votes, you will then have to deal with the matter of spread and so many other things. So as to why I didn't hold, I can't say for sure this is the reason, but there was no clear proof of mischief that is established and confirmed. There was no clear indication of any particular party being responsible for disruption. But what is clear is that all parties as stakeholders are determined to behave themselves. And that means they want to turn out, they want to secure the votes. So whatever joker anybody thinks he has under his sleeve, others are going to pull it out and drop on the ground for him. You're not going to go there and rig. If I'm contesting, I won't watch you do that. Knowing that you won't watch me, I will concentrate on processes, on getting my members to know what we have at stake, on telling people that, look, we already have X number of votes, so it is in our interest to, to go out and vote. Fortunately, there's no threat there's no threat to life. There's enough security, physical security, that is. And so I expect very reassuring outcomes from Ihiala. And the candidates, if and when one emerges as governor-elect, should have the dignity and decency, congratulate others, see what's good in their policies and take it, because it's about my state. Yeah.
I'm wondering whether, it is not important that we diagnose correctly why elections didn't take place in Ihiala. Because if this is supposed to be a test to what should happen or what could happen in 2023, I mean, INEC still has maybe one or two more tests before we get to 2023. I think Osho will also be in the offing perhaps next year or so. But if this is supposed to be an indicator as to, preparation grounds for what will come in 2023, perhaps, we should take a closer look as to why elections didn't happen in Ihiala. You don't agree?
I agree. We should go beyond taking a closer look to confirming actually why it didn't take place. There will definitely be a post-election, a post-mortem, and then a post-election report. 3 or 4 factors are to be determined with regard to why it didn't hold. Did materials get there on time? If the answer is yes, what happened on the day of the election? Was there enough security? The electoral material, the equipment, the electronic equipment, did they malfunction? You must get definite answers to this. Above all of that, you deal with the conduct of stakeholders. Were there cases of interference or attempted interference? Was the conduct of the officials above board? Would you say, for instance, that some officials were approached for some form of mischief and they declined, and you have a record of that? All of that must be specifically
security was the major reason we heard. We were able to gather on the ground. From what we understand, Ihiala borders Olu has been a hotbed of IPOB activities.
IPOB, ESN, yes.
Yes, so if that is the situation, if that is the current situation, and we've been told that, there was some appeal of some sort to INEC, to IPOB to withdraw their sit-at-home threats, there were questions as to how successful that appeal was, if there was still a threat of insecurity in a place like Ihiala.
I think we might need to distinguish between fear of insecurity and actual threat of insecurity. Olu is just practically Ihiala, both and the contiguous communities. But the question to ask is, were there clear indications of threat that were likely to disrupt the elections? The answer actually is no. IPOB threat had been withdrawn. There were no such fears. So we can speculate on maybe that's a factor in it, but the truth of the matter is that in terms of substantive physical presence and indications of clear and present danger, there was nothing to put on the table. And let's not forget, this is an off-season election. Many people complain that the federal government deployed too many policemen, 30-something thousand.
34,000.
Yes, but the logic of it is simple. This is off-season. That means elections are taking place only in Anambra State. That means if I'm in Plateau or Enugu or wherever state, and my job is to provide thugs during elections, that's when I do business. That's my Christmas season, if you like.
And it's very close to Christmas.
Well, and then you find that there's only one place elections are taking place. All the mischief makers in the other 35 states will target their market for thuggery and all sorts of mischief and guns will be Anambra. So the right thing to do when you have an off-season election is what the federal government has done. Overwhelm the physical space with security, observable physical security, and then also ensure that the people sent there know that their business is to provide security and not intimidate the people or misbehave. In terms of the conduct of the security personnel, there has been no indication, not even whether it's clear, that they did not conduct themselves properly. So the matter of whether it's IPOB is something that will come later, but let's not exaggerate. That officially they had withdrawn their sit-at-home threat. And you can't overlook the fact that even while the sit-at-home threat was on, there were 2 or 3 issues. Number one, people stayed at home more because of fear than clear proof of threat to their lives. You're in your house, you hear that a bus was burnt. In another place, 1 person killed. 3 instances across the entire southeast. Now, you're not sure. Those who were in that bus, they were not expecting it. So your issue would be, why should I bother to go out? Not that there are people, because you don't take a complete inventory of those who carried out those interventions, negative interventions you find, okay, you have a total of 11 or 23 people. Do they have the spread? Do they have the capacity? It's opportunistic, if you like, I wouldn't want to use opportunistic social disruption. A few people gather here, do their own. So 3 things. If you were to say, use your numbers and make the Southeast not to work, it won't happen, the numbers are not there. If you then say, oh, Southeast people, tell IPOB to go to hell, they'll say no. Many of the things IPOB is saying is true, and all of that. But the important point to make is that the IPOB threat and the reaction to it is more from the angle of self-preservation than clear evidence that for everybody who goes out, he or she may be taken out.
So today, I mean, some people will say that it's not like as if INEC has conducted perfect elections so far in Anambra. Yes, they have received some notable commendation in terms of the conduct. However, the elections are far from perfect. So if that is the situation, what more are we looking to see them perfect in the elections that will be conducted in Ihiala today?
Well, part of it is out of their control. The equipment just has to work. That's number one. Number two, if it's claimed, dubiously in my view, that it was all about security, then there should be. So since this is only one local government, people are first of all sure that nobody will attack them, and the security agencies will be in dozens around the polling units. So that already provides some level of assurance. INEC also, its communication is always upfront, if you notice. If it wasn't given the briefing of problems we are developing, there will have been strong suspicions about what were the problems. What would we want to see INEC do more? INEC may want to look for third-party endorsement in places where some of these things are happening. Spread it. We are all contesting. So this is the situation.
What do you mean by third-party endorsement?
You are stakeholders. This is a problem on the table. This is it. Do you see that as a problem? They say yes. Please, that's what we are saying. Say it too. We become more believable. That will help. It's doing a bit of that, but it will need to be a conscious, Yes, it hasn't conducted a perfect election, but nobody is looking. There's never been record of any perfect election. But more importantly, INEC has scored higher than I know it to have scored in any previous elections, and that's a significant point to put on the table.
Well, the Beavers has implication for what will happen in future. I mean, we saw what the candidate of ABGA, Professor Soludo, went through in his own polling unit before he was able to vote. Almost what we saw with President Goodluck Jonathan.
Precisely,
when
in last 2015, yeah.
Okay. Yes, so there'll be questions as to the deployment of technology, especially when you look at how contentious it has been in our Electoral Act, and the recent amendment that, is currently ongoing. It's not yet done. It's not finished. Yes, they have they've covered good ground, but it's not completely done. So there'll be questions as to if we're having problems with this particular technology, is it something that a lot of Nigerians will have faith in for the bigger elections when 2023 comes?
Well, the usual thing, and this is confirmed by world history, is that the majority of people never have faith in anything new. That's a fact. So if you were to wait for endorsement by everybody, it will never happen. That's number one. Number two, change does not occur because there's consensus, but because there are people who have vision and who pursue it. Number three, the car is a very dangerous, what do you call it? Equipment. At the time, if you remember when they were, it was just, I remember the recorded responses of some English nobles, that they hope nobody will venture into the public domain with that noisy contraption. They are comfortable with their bicycles and cars, but you don't listen to them. Or somebody says, oh, you know, you can have a blowout. Or in fact, the engine may stall. That's no reason. Nigeria must become part of the 21st century. There is clear evidence that the equipment works, just like there's clear evidence that the phone works. Facebook had a glitch and took us all out for how many hours? The whole world. Businesses were shut down. Billions of dollars were lost by organizations that were relying on Facebook, Twitter, and I think WhatsApp and all that. All were knocked out. Now, you now say, okay, the solution is to abolish Facebook, abolish the telephone. Let's use town crier in Abuja. You will send a town crier to my house to come for this program. No, but, you know, so we must completely ignore that objection. It does not have substance. It's not progressive. It's not intended to make us belong to where the rest of the world is. And the deployment of technology would subconsciously, subliminally, impact knowledge upgrade and subtle education of the citizenry, migration into the digital age, etc. All of that has to happen. So we see it as just election, but it's more than that. People will begin to get accustomed to the fact that there are things other than the traditional, you know, that can make you function in today's world. Some say, oh, I don't like the machine, but you're determined to go and vote, you go. So the population of those against it will keep declining progressively until the bulk of the people understand it and are at home with it. So no, I don't share the view that is something to worry about. My position is that every effort must be made up to the last minute to ensure that it's working, and that there must be some continuous monitoring to ensure. And whenever there's a glitch, make it public. So once that gets in the public domain, suspicion, why would people be relaxed? They are relaxed because you're telling them the truth. And that's another element INEC, you know, will seem to be doing well on. But the point is that let us not also over-celebrate. This is one state. With all INEC resources, leadership, management, focus on just one point. In 2023, it will be in 36 places. So let them also find a way of assuring us that there will be a replication of the level of success they recorded in Anambra, at least in this election. Perfect elections. In fact, if you did a perfect election, that's precisely the reason why we shouldn't trust it.
Perfect. Well, yes, indeed. But then there were questions as to what we make of the allegations of vote buying. Vote buying happened before and during. There were attempts to do it during the polls. And there were, I think it was an NGO, CDD, that came out to say that they were, you know,
Clear.
Clear recorded cases of vote buying. In some instances, very few, but some nonetheless. There was resistance by the voters, but nonetheless there were attempts, and in some instances successful attempts by the political parties to buy votes. So what do we make? How does that impugn the integrity of the polls?
Well, I also have very elaborate claims about vote buying, with even indications of which party was performed very well in the amount of money put out and which one did not. But that's one thing. The question then, does it impugn the integrity of the outcome? At two levels, let us look at something. There will always be people who operate on the fringe of legality in any contest. So for some who still belong in the school of thought that, look, we can't let it go away, they would hope to subvert the process by vote buying. So that is to be expected. Fringe actors will always be there. You saw the American results, even the former president's reaction to confirmed results. So it's a human, sometimes not to want to give up. Now, about impugning the integrity, it will depend on the volume of financial intervention, not claimed, confirmed, and in what areas. And then it will raise the question of, if there's evidence to that effect, what steps can be taken to invalidate the financially induced votes? Now, that's a hurdle. Anybody who is ready for that has the court processes to follow. It's not sufficient to cry on WhatsApp and, you know, make speeches. If you have the recording, go to court. unit so and so, this is what happened. We have it on tape, and therefore, it cannot. We challenge it, we demand that it be dropped. That will need to happen. But overall, one doesn't get the impression that there was, there was a massive deluge of financial adventures in polling booths. And also, in terms of the parties that appear to be doing well, they will be doing better than others. They also seem to be those who ordinarily on their own before the elections also had some good rating in terms of presence, capacity, and political muscle. You know, so when you look at all of that, those who are not doing too badly, also not doing too badly now and all of that, it presents a collection of variables that should be difficult to disaggregate and then move from there to say, actually, yes, it does impugn the integrity of the outcome. Somebody will need to establish that, and I'm not sure that can be established easily. It was, in my view, not an overwhelming index during the elections. Some candidates in their own right had their popularity. Inducing people will happen. And you know, we've had cases where even the candidate or the party itself in the past were not the ones who set out to induce, but enthusiastic, if you like, enthusiasts. My Oga must emerge. And I want to show him I delivered my area. That sort of thing can happen.
Well, let's take a break at this point. I'm sure my colleagues would like to intervene on this matter when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Dr. Oke Ikechukwu, the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy, is still with us in the studios, and we're talking about the elections in Anambra State. Today, the people of Ihiala will be expected to come out to vote. Anambra has 21 local governments of this number. 20 local governments have already had their elections and the results declared. However, there was no election done in Ihiala. And today, INEC will be conducting elections from around 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our correspondent, Seun Okimbaloye, will be giving us, our political editor, will be giving us updates shortly to, tell us what is happening in Ihiala as the people prepare. However, we're looking at what INEC has done already to project into what we expect of it to do today. Now, part of what we were discussing earlier is this incident of vote buying. Some people have said that INEC should now start looking for ways to prosecute this sort of offense. INEC usually stops at a report after the elections, and they say they really do not have the capacity. In some instances, they've tried, but they are looking for another agency which will be in charge of electoral offenses. In this instance, and looking at how our elections are done, is it something that we should be taking a more serious look at, an electoral offenses commission or an agency?
No. You see, we make the mistake of assuming that once there's a problem, you create an agency or commission. We have the Nigerian police force, we have the DSS. We even also have Civil Defense Corps. What will you create an agency for? Just to deal with electoral offenses? What is it you do during elections? Either disruption of public peace or attempt to bribe somebody or what again? So all of them fall within crimes that are already punishable by existing laws. You now set up a commission, you spend billions to set up, they have offices all over Nigeria to deal with electoral offenses. It's really insulting when one thinks of what it suggests that we don't really think things through.
Now, when we think about how many offenders we sometimes have...
No, I was coming to that.
Yes.
On the matter of offenders, you say INEC is being accused. INEC has no business apprehending a single offender. INEC is not a law enforcement agency, and I keep trying to make that point. Why do you provide police at polling booths? And the DSS are in the background somewhere. I was once a returning officer, not a returning officer, what do you call the person who mans the booth? I can't even remember my title. And yes, they came to rig the SDP this thing. They were giving money to all the polling booths. It was on Lagos Island. I told the poll clerk that it's not going to happen here. I was about to be beaten up. Fortunately, the police, they keep going around with patrol van. That's when they came up, and that's what we got to. So let's not bring INEC into what is not his business at all. INEC, okay, I'm the one at a polling booth. I'm not a staff of INEC. I'm an ad hoc staff, trained for about a week or 2 days or 3 days, and I've mastered the job of managing elections. And somebody is misbehaving. It is not my business to touch him. That's why the law enforcement agencies exist. So expand their brief. The brief doesn't even need to be...
That's a brief of the law enforcement agencies.
Already, this is criminality. Elections is a public process. You're trying to stop a public process. The police can pick you up. Civil defense can pick you up. DSS can pick you up with the military or whoever. Local government authorities can intervene, but they are dysfunctional at that time because nothing is working. But please, let's not push for any electoral. Just like the other time they were talking about a process of crime agency, that if people are caught for corruption, their houses are seized the money, an agency that will monitor it and make sure it doesn't get lost. I beg your pardon. No, we don't need a process, what do you call it? An electoral offenses, commission, agency, whatever. These are institutions that end up not reporting to anybody. People get salaries for doing nothing throughout the year. We are creating too many of them. As we speak, recall that I think a food security agency was set up about 6-7 months ago. Indeed. What is it doing? And so many others. In the last 2 years, at least 6-7 other agencies. We are creating redundancies and deploying public funds on consumption and salary paying without productivity and service delivery. No, I don't support the idea.
Well, I have to thank you very much. We all have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning and sharing your thoughts with us. Dr. Oke Ikechukwu is the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy and is speaking with us here in our studios in Abuja. Thank you so much for coming in. Well, let's send this to Lagos now and let's see where we're going from there. Gentlemen.
Well, yeah, Professor Leia Olurode, as you've seen there, joins us next. He's a former national commissioner with INEC. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on today. Well, I haven't seen the way these elections have turned out with the new strategies, technology that have been deployed to this. You've watched from a distance. What's your impression?
Well, I have a mixed impression about INEC's outing in Anambra State. First of all, what comes strongly across to me is that Anambra is a paradox. The resolution of that paradox somehow can be said to be salutary. In other respect, I think there seems to be tremendous room for improvement. What do I mean by the reference to Anambra as a paradox?
Yeah.
Here is a state where, personally, I had thought that there was no way you're going to have any election there at all. Say 3 weeks, 2 weeks, until the governors in the southeast, their intervention appears to me to be miraculous, that they were able to douse tension, and they were able to sort of engage the critical stakeholders in the state, especially HIPOP and the group that it represents, to see that at the end of the day, the crisis we have had to be resolved in a civil way, which elections represent. That the elections took place at all, I would say, congratulations to Nigerians, congratulations to the people of Anambra. But I don't think we've had the best election. In the sense that some of the persistent challenges and conundrums during our elections, I still saw very strong manifestations of them.
Like which one?
Both at the front end and at the back end.
Okay.
Let me talk about the front end challenges that we saw.
Yeah.
I think there's a need to improve on the register. I doubt between 2010, when the register was compiled, I knew under JEGA there were efforts to sanitize the register. What do I mean by the register? Mm-hmm. The register probably still contains names of people that had died between the time of compilation, continuous voter registration, and today.
Was that a huge problem for these elections, you think?
No, not necessarily a huge problem. But the point is that when you're talking about you have this number of votes in order to conclude the election, it can become a challenge. I don't think you need that number. So it's like exaggerates the margin of win or under-exaggerate, but likely to exaggerate. But more importantly is with respect to some of the manifest indicators of good elections. One, the issue of logistics, timely commencement of elections. But again, some of these are beyond INEC.
Beyond INEC?
Some of them are beyond INEC.
What, like which one?
Oh, logistics, for example. INEC alone cannot deploy to the field. It alone cannot deploy the security agents that have to be in the field.
Okay, now before you speak about the back end, on this particular point, when you say INEC alone cannot deploy, INEC requests, they have a budget. They present a budget time and again.
It's beyond budgeting. That's the mistake we make. It's beyond budgeting.
I'm building up to that.
Even if you have all the money.
I'm building up to that.
Okay.
So when they go with all that defense, they are supposed to highlight, look, what challenges are there for them that they can't handle? They've been conducting elections for like forever. So is this supposed to be is this supposed to be tenable to Nigerians that in spite of all that allocation, and then they tell us it is beyond them and we're supposed to accept it?
Let me say this. When I say some of the challenges, especially some of the persistent challenges and conundrums, were beyond INEC because INEC alone cannot do it. Election is about partnership. Election is about partnership. How much control will you say INEC has over its staff? You can only appeal to them, behave yourself when you've done everything. You still have staff that will be unscrupulous. What do you do about them? Then you will respond to them, but not immediately on the field.
Yeah,
that's one. But more importantly is the issue of logistics. Deployment of election materials, even technology, may be beyond INEC because you need to train people. You might have done the best training that you taught, But again, when they get to the field, they might not be able to respond to some of these persistent challenges.
Well, Prof,
so
you spoke about, my apologies, sir, you spoke about partnership.
Yes.
And I think that's where it all comes to. But even in every partnership, there has to be a lead. Which role INEC is playing when it comes to elections? INEC partners with security agents, INEC partners with state governments, INEC partners with those...
Can I mention one, which is really critical in terms of deployment, in terms of logistics?
Yeah.
INEC, sometimes in 2011 or 2012, had reached a robust understanding, memorandum of understanding with Nigerian Transport Union. In 2015, they deployed, NURTW deployed all its arsenal. You know, it had a large spread all over the country. All over the country. Supposing for certain reasons, for certain unethical behavior, that cooperation was not forthcoming on the day of the election, which is possible.
It goes to the same issue.
Yeah.
What's the discipline? What's the consequence?
But that can be resolved there and then.
I agree.
That will be a post-election review.
But this
reform.
is not a one-off challenge, Prof. It's something that's been happening every time. We've always, to the point, you would remember a point that INEC had to postpone election because of this challenge.
No.
So if, just 1 second, what are the consequences when there is a weakness in the link on the field? There has never been one. No. Because if there was any, there would have been a strong enough system to forestall any such happening. So the question here is, how can we forestall such letdowns, such weakness in the link? How can we strengthen the link such that we don't have that kind of challenge from time to time? Yeah, today it is logistics. Yeah. Tomorrow, and it's logistics of moving things around. Yeah. Tomorrow it could be the logistics of security. And so how do we forestall such
which may
recurrences?
Affect the timely commencement of elections.
Or even the veracity, or the integrity of the election process altogether.
Let me say this. In some other countries, some of the challenges that INEC confront will be resolved through patriotism and the zeal that this country belongs to us. We have to get this election done, whatever the cost. And you say a number of people, volunteers, coming to the field. I have a car, I can say on the door of Anambra, I'm going to go to Anambra State, deploy, use my vehicle to distribute. Because it's just simply a distribution, which can be done by people, all of them coming to the same template with INEC. But if for some reasons, for some unpatriotic element within the transport union or within any other organization that INEC is partnering with, refuse to deploy that patriotism, how much can INEC do? So what I'm saying is that some of these challenges cannot be handled by INEC alone, because INEC alone, there's no way, no country can do everything.
I agree with you, sir. Yeah. But my point here is, what is the consequence when we notice that there is a weakness in the link as a result of one of these partnerships that INEC does not have control over? No. Is there anything that can be done to ensure that that doesn't happen again?
Some of these elements that get thrown up unexpectedly during elections, when they are resolved, they are factored into the next election. And that is why probably you will not see most of those challenges again in the next election, but new other challenges will come up again, and you need to respond to them. You have to continuously improve on the integrity of any election. You learn some lessons, share those experiences with other stakeholders, put everything on the table, then you move on.
But assuming that were the case, we hear time and again when we ask INEC, they
what
always
I'm saying,
tell us...
I don't even know the level of cooperation. What I'm really saying is that already INEC has embedded assets in some of these. I want to see INEC building on them, improving on them, and making sure it's not a partnership that comes to the open only close to elections. There should be a way of playing it out, testing it, and making sure that the partners are there for you all the time.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to build on, because we don't want to give, or we shouldn't be given the impression that if certain things don't go right, well, INEC, they throw their hands up in the air, because if the country spends that amount of money, it will be unacceptable and inexcusable for INEC to tell us that, well, it's because we were not in charge of logistics. And so they know this all the time. They go before press across the country and say, we are ready for the elections, time and again. So they can't keep telling us it's logistic problem or that there are no volunteers. There are thousands of volunteers in this country that can come up.
But again,
like this has happened.
Chamberlain, you need to be selective you need to be suspicious of some of these elements that we say parade themselves ostensibly as non-governmental organizations. They want to help the electoral system. They may also have their hidden agenda.
No
and then
problems.
we need to scrutinize,
Yeah.
to screen, to be sure that we are on the same platform. See, what I would say is that Anambra election, will I say there has been tremendous improvements on the conduct of elections? Well, putting everything on the table, what will be my overall assessment? I wouldn't score INEC very high, but I won't score INEC very low. But again,
So what would you
understanding,
score
hold on. Considering the context in which that election, I never, like I said before, honestly, I'm admitting my honest thought. I never knew there would be elections in Anambra. That election took place at all. I would say kudos to INEC, kudos to all the other partners in the election, all the other stakeholders, the governors of the Southeast, the people of Anambra State. But for the dexterity of some electoral officers, some of the people working for INEC, and the dogged determination of the people of Anambra, there will have been no election in Anambra State.
No.
So challenges, of course, there are, but you must understand the context of those challenges. I'm not here to defend INEC because we want to see improvement in the election.
So
I want to see a reduction in time being invested in election. And I think I saw a bit of that. Though election did not commence throughout on time. Timely commencement is a challenge. Diplomacy was a challenge. Technology also is not working. I would have thought there should have been massive testing, and I've always cautioned.
So who do we blame for that technology?
Hold on. I would blame INEC. I would blame INEC in the sense that maybe there's not been proper training of its ad hoc staff. You understand? Maybe those machines have been held, and they are being
those are new technology. The beavers. INEC recently procured them.
If they are new, then there may be problem with training of staff. So I would be asking INEC, please, for subsequent election, the only luck we had with Anambra State is that just a one-off election. If it had been a general election and you have that kind of outing,
or if you had a lot more turnout,
it could have been more fiasco.
If you had more turnout,
yes,
it might have been a challenge.
Turnout in Anambra, I'm sure we hovers around below 20%. The last election, 2017, was about 25% or thereabouts.
It was actually 22%. And I was going to go there. That's from data released by CDT.
Which is not an indication of voter apathy. It's not an indication that people are not willing to vote, because there are all kinds of obstacles erected on their way to the polling unit in terms of trepidation, fear, whether elections will hold or will not hold. But overall, I think there are challenges that are persisted, which are frustrating, which shouldn't happen, because, like you said, the country had invested so much in this electoral process. Yeah. The budgeting for election is so huge, and people are wondering, what is the outcome that
we should be thinking about reducing the cost of election, not increasing them every time.
Hold on. Again, do you have any choice? There are no other better ways of resolving conflict, pursuits about development.
Is there a role for the law in that, in resolving electoral conflicts?
If you ask me, I would say that electoral system is overloaded. There's an overdose of legislation. That's not what you need. What you need, and unfortunately, you cannot legislate about it, is the mindset of an average politician, the mindset of an average elector. And I'm sure we are getting to that, where people will see money and they will say, no, we don't need your money. So you will be reducing the massive injection of money into the electoral culture.
But when you say the mindset of the politician can't be legislated, I agree. But the conduct of the politician can be.
Not completely, because you also need to have electoral offenses commission. But that alone is not enough. Ghana also conduct elections. But people are more ethical. People show tremendous commitment.
I'm building to something,
yes.
Prof. When you talk about, the mindset cannot be legislated, well, we can't. The conduct is legislated. So one wonders if there is a role for the politician. Maybe not for INEC. Maybe is there a role in the law that any form of legislation or conduct or rule of engagement
or
whatever
the amended electoral
that will
Act.
say that the politician who errs is disciplined or...
It's there already. People have been sent to jail for electoral malfeasance. But that doesn't stop them. People are dead, just like corruption. People still,
Is it to say
the
then,
laws are stringent.
I asked that advisedly, is it to say then that it is the law is not strong, the punitive
It's the
measure is not
impunity.
strong enough?
Well, I think deterrent, the element of deterrent is very strong as well. What I think is missing, that is why I said you cannot legislate good governance. People also have to make up, look, like I said, the INEC is just an institution, but that institution on its own cannot perform miracles. People are thinking that INEC can perform miracles. No, you need partnership to be able to deliver on credible elections. That partnership, the stakeholders, politicians are there, electoral INEC staff, they are there, security agencies are there, the private sector is there. There are roles for all of us. If we are not on the same platform, the same synergy, we need more synergy. Look, you saw the altercations between that electoral officer for one local government and the doctor of law from the University of Calabar.
They were both INEC officials.
No, one is ad hoc staff,
and the other one is
the INEC staff. There should it's partnership. There should be synergy. There should not be discordant tones. But you can see they disagree. It's a fundamental disagreement.
But that's supposed to be INEC's both
we
of them.
know what I'm
to
saying.
make sure that they work together.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But look, the chairman of INEC will be in his office. He cannot preempt the conduct of. He can put laws in place. If you did this in the field, you'll be sanctioned. Of course, that is there. But you will have committed an electoral crime.
Yeah, but Prof, we shouldn't forget that we've done these elections before.
And that is why I said
we had an improvement.
Those persistent challenges that recurred, those recurrent challenges ought not to be in place.
And we're spending more money now than we spent during
of course, everything has
time.
gone up in terms of cost.
Why should
what are you not spending more money on? Spending more money on roads, spending more money on this. You see, I think we need to get things right, Chamberlain. You see, my concern are Nigerians in their mindset. Are they ready?
Yeah, but what we saw in Anambra, what happened, how completely different it was from several other elections where usually there's a lot of violence. But this one, you said you were pleasantly surprised. No death in these elections. Yes. And then the violence.
The fiasco was actually reduced.
Exactly.
But again.
So this is an improvement in that regard.
At the back end, at the front end, you see some of these things. We're talking about logistics.
So what's the back end that you were going to speak about?
No, it's about the planning.
Oh,
the planning. I think INEC should spend what I would call its leisure time. That's the period when it is not really involved in election, in trying to do some of these back-end things.
What are those things, Prof? You know, post-2015 elections, post-2019 elections, one of the consistent words being given out is we need to have a conversation on the electoral process. Yeah. We have been talking about talking until now.
No, the doing is taking, something is happening as well.
We're
you need a comprehensive review of Anambra to know areas where at INEC improved,
just a second, Prof.
Where at INEC really faltered.
Prof, the issue here is we are talking about talking. We haven't even had the talk. We are talking about having a conversation around our elections. And we've been talking about this for a very long time. Part of that conversation, I guess, is what's evolved into the electoral bill that is yet to be consummated and signed to law by the president anytime now. The conversation around should we be having the kind of attitude, mindset, patriotism, and all of that, those ones, as you said, cannot be captured in law. What are those things that we need to have conversations around that cannot be legislated? And who should be taking the lead?
I would say that we've had enough conversations. And I will agree with you. I'll concede it to you. What is left, one philosopher said that previous philosophers had interpreted the world. What is left is how do we change the world? We've talked so much about elections. What is left is to say practical improvement on the delivery of electoral services and therefore have robust citizenship. I don't want to go to a polling to participate in the electoral system and be afraid of my life. I don't want to leave a final word for my children that in case I do not return, please, this one should take this one should. But that's what we are still seeing. But in the context, like I said, we're talking about Anambra. We're talking about the implication of Anambra for 2023. I would still say there are rooms for improvement, definitely. for all the stakeholders. But again, I'll still insist that it's beyond INEC. Every one of us is in. The media is involved. You bring in look, channels. You're bringing it to the doorstep of everybody. So the more we talk about it, you see, we might be immune. We might not be sensitive to the changes that we see, changes that are taking place. But definitely, you cannot compare what we are doing today in 2021 to what used to be the case in the pre-2010 intervention by INEC. Look, in 2007, we forget so soon. There are practically no elections in the country. And don't forget, in those days, governors used to be impeached at will. Now, how many of such?
But
so
now,
what I'm saying, don't let us be blind to the fact that there are improvements are taking place, but in the context of the global civilization and the template of election administration, we're not doing as much as we should be doing.
Yeah, because that...
But the historical context must be understood properly.
Because the thing is, right now, given the conduct and performance of INEC for that elections, they should be doing way better than how they performed for this election.
I agree.
So
we must not deceive INEC. After listening to some of the commentators, they are not good enough. I know that certainly, given the caliber of people in INEC, things can be better. But we must also understand, like I emphasized, some of these developments are not for INEC alone. Some of the talk we are doing, we should talk more to the Nigerian and other stakeholders in the electoral process. INEC alone cannot do anything. You cannot move anything. Because they will plan, the best of planners, they are in INEC, they will do everything possible. But the actual implement, and that is what I mean by more synergy between the back end and the front end.
Okay,
so there will be communications.
When we return, we'll even find out what are these things that are beyond INEC, for instance, that we can improve upon. That's when we return in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are with Professor Leia Oluro, the former National Commissioner for INEC. We're going to talk about what it is that we need to do such that at the end of the day, we don't need to worry about whether or not INEC will do a good job, at least take care of their own end of the bargain. So from your perspective, having been there, and from what you see today, what is it that we need to do to improve moving forward?
The number one impediment to conducting elections that could be rated as above average relates to two items in the forefront that are very critical. One is technology, the other one is logistics. Unfortunately, these two are beyond INEC in a way.
Technology beyond INEC?
Yeah, in a way, yes.
How?
Because it requires partnership with the provider of that technology. And there's no assurance that it's going to work 100%. And that is why in some quarters, you see the luck we had in Anambra, the failure of technology could not be said to be in the area of strength of any of the political parties. They were randomly spread. So you could not raise the issue of connivance or deliberately deployment of faulty technology so that somebody will lose in his own base.
So if that were the case, why is it then that INEC will always come up and say, well, look, for these elections, no beavers, no voting?
You know what?
Why did they thump their chest that way if they know there will be
even including electronic transmission of results and all those? Look, it's the way the world is going. Look, some countries in Western Europe, they are reticent at full deployment of technology to elections. So what we really need to do is I'm not sure we are piloted enough. We haven't piloted some of this technology well enough. And for future elections, for 2023, I will be urging INEC, please stay away from full deployment of technology. Let it be partial. Agree with the stakeholders. We're going to deploy in two states in each of the regions of the country, not all.
But
But wouldn't that be seen as one step forward, two steps backward?
No. You see, you're perfect. You're perfect. If I want to teach my illiterate mother how to use a laptop or how to use a sophisticated gadget, telephone handset, it will take me time. If I want to teach you, if you want to teach me, you will not spend so much time. You see, you have to be circumspect. That technology doesn't provide all answers to your electoral challenges.
But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't deploy fully. They can deploy, but have backups.
Oh, well, maybe you have backups. You're talking about cost. You know, this is
technology should reduce the cost.
No,
manpower.
But if you have to, if you need to have backup, you know the implication. In some other countries, you'll not be talking of. You also have to be alive to the possibility that those technologies can be stolen. How do you replace them? They can be hijacked. Anything can happen. You see, that's number one. Number two is that's number one. Number two is the issue of logistics. Logistics is very primary to everything you want to do. If there is sabotage by some set of transporters and they decided not to deploy to areas on time because they believe the opposition is going to have an upper hand, what can INEC do to respond to that immediately? That's why I still believe we need them to reform our mindset. What kind of a country do we want? How far are we ready to go to put on a patriotism cap? You know,
well, one of the things that you have also said earlier, Prof, aligns with the fact that INEC needs to partner. Now, who are these critical partners that INEC has to work with for the elections?
Let me take logistics, for example. It's either INEC looks in the direction of private transport owners, NURTW, or if it thinks that it's too politicized, look into the providers, other providers in that area, like some of these long distance buses or whatever, to partner with them. You can even toy with the Okada people because they have massive network. Their coverage is huge.
I'm not too sure about the Okada.
No. You see, you need to
not the way they drive.
No, maybe he's talking about the logistic,
I'm
the
talking
delivery.
about the logistics.
Those private delivery.
Yeah, or look in the direction of private jet owners. Some of these jet owners, they can pull their jets on the line for the sake of the country to deploy.
On patriotic note, right?
Yeah, on patriotic note.
Okay.
Yes, they just allow you to own it for a time. Number two is the discipline of erring officers. How much power has INEC got? In India, for example, when policemen are deployed for their elections, it's like the overseer of the election assumed the position of the Inspector General of Police for the period of the election. He had control in terms of their discipline. If they err, they can be sanctioned. But in this country, you still need to make a report to the police, and it hasn't any final say. Even for NYC members, it takes time if they misbehave. So INEC need more control.
But with the NYC, I think they've always spoken about how willing and ready they are. All they need is just provide them security. They will always be willing
if
to
they underperform,
do all of
if
those
they connive, if there is,
but
you can't deal with that immediately. That's what I'm saying.
From the results we've seen, what percentage of performance or connivance have we seen from youth corps members? It's rarely.
No. It may not be much in this election, but definitely they do run away. They do run away on the day of elections.
For fear of
in
security.
Anambra State, for fear of insecurity.
Exactly. So
what,
not manipulation.
What do? INEC has been training ad hoc staff since 2010 or 2011. You trained a large number that you can continue to. You have their template. You can continuously recruit. You see, somebody who has done one election, you cannot compare to somebody who has done about 3 or 4 elections. In terms of performance, in terms of outcome, in terms of dexterity, understanding, and professionalism.
Yeah, but INEC uses corps members who
In most cases, they train them and send them out. Yeah. No, what I'm saying is that if you continuously engage a number of ad hoc staff who had performed in previous elections, you just add a few new members to them, you enhance the professionalism.
But how much training do they actually require? Isn't it just to deploy, in this case, the BVAS technology?
It's not that easy.
No, but if you're getting core members, if you're making a case for persons who you have trained previously, I'm not sure that will apply in this case, because if this BVAS is just newly acquired, Even if you had old members of old ad hoc members, you still need to retrain them for this purpose. So
no,
it's
the
the same training.
refreshers training is what you're going to do. You're not going to
It's the
start
same
up
thing.
initial. No, it's different.
From
it's
using
different.
this equipment, which they just procured.
No, it's different from just bringing them in. The freshers from the university, the only qualification they had is that they're serving NYC members. If I've had people that are trained before in the past, and I'm recruiting from that, 70% of my staff, 30% from the new staff, it's going to be a different
In
outcome.
other words, we should unbundle INEC. Is that what you're suggesting? Would that be a way forward?
That is, of course, you can, NYC is providing the core of ad hoc staff. You can continue to rely or outsource the training to NYC to do. But what I'm saying is that you are not making use enough of embedded assets that you already have. If I've trained you before, 3 years ago, 4 years, and I've been doing refreshers course for you online, it will be different from somebody who I just pick on the street and I just train.
So who are these embedded assets that you've trained? The former core members? Previous core members?
Yes. It's an asset in them. They're there.
Yeah, but
If I've distributed materials for you before, election material before, as a road transport union, and you now come to me again, this job is coming around again, it's going to be different. If I introduce new people every time,
I get that, but if you have to go that way, how do you then guarantee, because any core member can finish service and decide to join a political party? Am I supposed to go back to that person because I trained them before and bring them back in?
No, it doesn't stop you from joining political. We are talking about, you see, we are talking about commitment. It's different. No.
Bro,
are you saying that
if they are members of political
are you saying
parties,
that INEC staff, they are not sympathetic to parties? Are you telling me I was not? You can. It's different from doing elections. It's professionalism.
Is it the same thing?
How will you change the template? How will you change the outcome of elections?
So
one must really be a mad person to wanting to use that to alter the electoral template.
So
no.
Is being sympathetic.
We should not, because you see, we're not, again, you're talking about this enfranchisement of security agents during elections. Is that fair? In other countries, they allow them to vote.
We'll come to that, but I need to ask.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing when you say being sympathetic to a political party? Is it the same thing as being a member? Because my point is, if ad hoc members of staff who were youth corps members at the time, 2-3 years ago, have been trained and they left service and joined the political party, become a card-carrying member, will that be right to bring them back on, irrespective of them being a member of a political party? It doesn't matter to you?
So should we then disenfranchise them? Should we then stop using the asset embedded in them just because there's no law?
No, you don't think there's anything wrong in using that?
Are you telling me that my political affiliation, my political idiosyncrasies, my political ideology is frozen because I work for INEC? The answer is no. What is important is what do I do on the field? So it's an open thing. But I go to the election.
But, Prof, that balance is delicate.
Oh, so you prefer that?
No, let's understand it. You said the other time that in some other climes, some of the things that we that are not allowed here are allowed. You talked about patriotism.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are those who work in election or in the electoral process in other climes, and for the name of patriotism, they will jettison party, pecuniary, personal interests for patriotic interests. Would you say the same for our client?
No, not yet. But you're asking me
That's
a question.
the question
he's asking. The question you asked me before is that what is the way forward? Yeah. And I say I would prefer to live in a country where the fact that I'm an INEC commissioner does not automatically disenfranchise me. Where I'm a commissioner of police, I can go, vote in the morning, then deploy, go to my other station to perform my duty. They are two separate activities. One is about my citizenship. You're not telling me that ideologically I should be frozen, I should have no say now I'm going to be run. Look at the number of policemen that are involved. Look at the number of NYC members that are involved. So you will not allow them to participate, make a decision, make a choice for how many years. If I get involved in INEC for 10 years, for 20, 30 years of my life, then I will be frozen in terms of making choices.
We're not saying
we
that
should
they
be
should
looking
be frozen.
at the possibility of all those. That's what it means.
No, we're not saying they should be frozen. We're just asking, since you suggest that, because we saw the outcry from Nigerians when they tried to appoint a member of a political party as a national commissioner for INEC. Yes. So do you think Nigerians, having cried out that much, will then look the other way if they are card-carrying members in INEC itself?
You see, there's nothing that is fixed about political affiliation. The fact that she worked in the presidency does not automatically mean that if she had to make a choice in Anambra State, for example, that she would have voted for APC. No, that's the way we should be looking. Look, in other countries, enlargement of citizenship rights. They have been enlarged.
Prof,
the fact that you are talking...
You are talking about the ideal versus the reality.
Yeah.
The ideal is what you're talking about. But our reality doesn't suggest what you're saying.
No, look, we're talking about continuous improvement in our electoral system. We're saying deploy more technology, improve on your laws. What stops you from improving on citizenship? Their right to also have a say. If they're going to work in INEC for 30 years,
Okay, so how do we get to that point that you're talking about?
Some of the things we are putting on the table now, they are the ways to go. They are the way to navigate the challenges that we have. There will always be challenges. Even if you resolve that, and you are sure you have a way of measuring my political affiliation, and you see it, 0 for PDP, 0 for APC, whatever. I may have for Labour Party or for any other party. What I'm saying is that, look, let us continue to trust the institution. Let us also continue to trust individuals.
Okay, now
they mean good.
Okay.
Otherwise, there will be nobody who wants to do anything.
Everyone means well for their pockets, but it's for the patriotism that's the issue here. Now, you have talked about patriotism the other time. How do we get to that point? What are the things we need to do or teach? What word needs to be put out? You would agree with me, Prof, that, just a second, a number of people have a significant measure of distrust in anything that has to do with government. So talking about patriotism with a huge trust deficit, it's a very dicey dynamic.
Good question. Good question. What is missing, what is making people to be so unpatriotic, patently and ruthlessly, is because they don't perceive this country as just. That's the truth. If I perceive that I receive justice, look, if I receive justice in the institutions that I deal with, that I relate to, from people working in the public sphere, when I get out of there, that will make me to also want to replicate and reproduce that level of trust that I had received. Otherwise, you will not be a complete personality. But if I don't trust, if I don't receive justice from those institutions, I'm likely to visit that institution with greater injustice. That's what we need to do more. In all our facets of life, let there be more justice. Look, one area where justice is very important. If this is what people's preference is, respect that preference.
I'm actually hoping that we'll be able to speak with Sheon Okinbaloye, our political editor, this morning. But in terms of the conversations around unbundling INEC, Chamberlain mentioned that earlier. A good number of people had said pre-2019 elections, even after it, that perhaps there's a lot more work for INEC to do than the capacity that INEC has. You've talked about the Electoral Offences Tribunal. There are those who say that INEC is unable, due to capacity or incapacity, to monitor the political parties as and when due, talk about monitoring their finances and all of those things. Do you think INEC is chewing too much than what it has capacity to?
Let me say that definitely there are certain constitutionally imposed duties on INEC that can be outsourced, that other agencies might be able to do it better. One that comes strongly to me, given my experience in INEC, is that of registration. With all we are doing with data registration, compilation of identity, preventing identity theft, I think if you relieve INEC because there's nothing that says INEC should do that alone. Other agencies of government, you have the National Registration, NIMC or whatever, they just pull out the 18 years and above. Then you also have the National Population Commission. They look at people that have died. But we are not getting that off our register. New entrants may have challenges coming on board. But now I think INEC is that process because you can, with your phone, you can get online, you can perform half of the operation, then you go to INEC office to conclude. So that would be a major thing, a major burden on INEC. Secondly, is the issue of prosecution of electoral offenders. presently INEC does that. INEC cannot do it alone. Need the support of the police to do. You can look at other bodies. But see, my fear is that I don't want to be seen as an advocate of multiplying bureaucracies in Nigeria. Because the mere fact that you take it off INEC, give it to another institution, another body to do, there is no proof that that body is going to do it better. What you have merely done is to multiply bureaucracy.
But if I can benchmark an example, there's the Code of Conduct Bureau.
Yeah.
It doesn't prosecute its own cases. It goes to the Code of Conduct Tribunal. So there is a court for that. Do you think it's something that we can do for our election?
In terms of electoral offenses?
Yes.
Oh, sure. Like I said before, other agencies of government can be saddled with that, but maybe not necessarily Code of Conduct Bureau.
No, I'm just giving an example
yes,
of the two.
It looks plausible, and it makes sense. It looks logical as well. But I think if INEC that task is outsourced or taken out of INEC, we might be seeing a cleaner register.
But they set up election tribunal because it had to do with elections. They adjusted the process such that some cases don't stop at the Court of Appeal. It goes to the Supreme Court. They do these things when it benefits them.
Yeah.
So
well, I think the way to go really is to have, you see, because asking electoral tribunals or the court, judiciary to resolve electoral process is not ideal.
You know, when you
just have a few justices sitting down there. They are also, some of them are camouflaged as they are politicians. You know, where everybody has to have that. You are infected with politics. Nobody is immune from politics. Nobody completely. They may not be there and they're hoping to campaign, but when they do, they argue logic of this, of that case, and they canvass position, they are canvassing political positions as well. So I wouldn't say that they are 100% immune. So resolving electoral challenges, conundrums through the court is not the best, because you are now asking how many justices do you have? Just about 10 or 11 of them in an electoral tribunal to decide the fate of millions of people, which may go the other way. So you may not receive electoral justice. So I think we need to make sure we dispense at every level we are. Let's be seen to do more justice to the people of the country. And then you are investing in trust, in loyalty, in patriotism, and I'm sure people will have no choice but to pay you back in that coin. If people feel unjustly treated, that's what they will give back.
So what are your expectations for today's elections?
Yeah, I shouldn't think I don't foresee any serious challenge. I don't see a repeat of what happened in Kano. I also don't see a repeat of what happened in Imo. I wouldn't want to see what's also happening in some other states where it was clear victory was given to a party really that didn't win the election. We have seen the general trend, and I will expect that general trend is going to be concluded today by 6 p.m. or thereabout by 7 p.m. Otherwise, it's going to be tragic for the country. If the minority party wins or on technical ground, I want to see this election concluded on the trend that has started. Because the only way you can restore peace in Anambra, in the whole of the southeast, in the whole of the southwest, in the whole of the northeast, north central, everywhere, is to return to the electoral template, to define, so that people will know these are the people. If you elected the wrong people, good luck to you.
Yeah, because a lot of the challenges we face in this country, they rise and end with our leadership recruitment process.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get that process
then
right,
you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
That's why we keep harping on some of these things to ensure that the right people come through. But from what you've seen today, are you optimistic? Do you see people who ordinarily have said, politics is too dirty, it's too violent, I won't go in because of what's going on? Do you think that perhaps what they've seen now in terms of deployment elections, do you think they'll throw their hat in the ring?
I think there are positive signals from Anambra, which I think, in terms of, look at the caliber of people that the electoral process thrown up, who had shown interest. No, I don't see any of them that is a write-off, who had nothing to do before. We just saw, you see politics as a matter of life or death, who would be desperate to come to do it. Look at the comments coming from them. Very, very favorable. In the previous election, you will have seen them condemning INEC. INEC never did well. It's a write-off. There are so much corruption. Cancel the election. None of them have said that. And don't let us forget the signal. We should remain very positive because we have seen countries that are trotting this path before. The democratization forces have been reversed. You have seen coup taking place. Don't let us just think that we cannot get back there.
How do
we
we
must
avoid
do
that?
everything.
But you talked about justice the other
Yes.
time as a panacea.
Electoral
so to speak.
justice.
So how do we get to that point? Because the electoral process doesn't begin and end with the election.
No.
It starts with the people who throw up political actors and all
The
of that.
leaders who recruited leaders.
So how do we get to that point that electoral justice is a given, not conditional these days?
The role of INEC is to put smiles on the faces of the electorates, on the faces of contenders. That's it. By making sure that the final verdict does what? Reflect the general consensus. But what you are trying to do is to build consensus in Anambra. Under what condition will there be peace? You give me this candidate, this party, then we will support. You give me another candidate, there will be turbulence. So INEC rose top at that. But as to the caliber of people that get thrown up, it's beyond INEC.
Now,
INEC has no, you can't disqualify, you can't, even
but,
if the party had imposed on INEC the worst candidate ever, that you know is a rogue, is this,
we
is
will
that.
get that point that is beyond them. But
Yeah.
with the way things are, I mean, if we improve on this process and
Yeah.
INEC makes sure that technology, this beavers works really well, at least appreciably well, do you think they will send a strong message to politicians to get their internal democracy right?
Sure.
Because if you don't get the right person, Nigerians will just get there and boot the person out.
Except Nigerian politicians are dead at learning. One of the lessons that I have seen, that I have observed, I think for once or twice, I can speak of Jonathan Naira. I can also talk a bit about the Buhari regime. Honestly, I'm clear about this. There has not been any instance where I have seen, either openly, hidden, or whatever, where Buhari said, this is the candidate that must win. Go and clear with your party. If you are thrown up, I will support you. I think that's the attitude that we need to do. In position of candidate, look, the cost, what it has cost this country in terms of lives, in terms of instability of governance, is terrible. Let people in the party, that's why I think the Electoral Act is certainly for direct primary. The management of direct primary can be chaotic. Most of the parties, that is the truth. I'm not sure they have a clean register of who their members are.
That's the first step, getting a clean, credible
Yeah,
register.
because some of these leading politicians, they will just sit down somewhere in the corner of their room, they conjure up names of people, and they will go to the garages and bring people to come and stand for
Do we need to legislate upon that?
No, well, I think given our country, since we believe in over-legislation, because otherwise it's an affair of the party. The party, you throw up a candidate that is not competitive, that you cannot sell, you lose.
Is that to say that the political parties themselves are politically illiterate?
Well, I won't assess them as such. I think what I see more, the desperation knows no limit. I'm telling you, Chamberlain. From the little I've seen, they are desperate. And the mentality, you must deliver, you must win at all costs.
And what do you think is making that desperation possible?
It's
Why are they
it's
desperate?
money, the money culture. Look at what they make. So I would rather, because if you lose everything. So, and that calls for reform.
Shouldn't we find
it calls
a way?
for reform of our electoral system.
Is it of the electoral system of making political office not so attractive?
That is one. But at the same time, they don't believe, even if you amend the law, a legislator will be on part-time, they will not take this much, they will look for how to cut corners. So what you need to do is to make all of them winners. I've been advocating for that.
That addresses
make everybody a winner.
That
In a way.
addresses the winner takes all mentality.
Yes. That is
How do
why
we do that?
the clamor for restructuring is also because winners, look, I will be in the cooler.
How do we make everyone winners? Because Prof, we have to go shortly.
How many parties are contesting? Look at the difference in the number of seats in 2015, much more closer than 2019, between the leading party, APC, and PDP. There was no party that had a landslide victory. PDP also had almost the same number of one quarter in almost the same number of states as the APC. The difference was not much. But PDP for 4 years now, for 8 years now, by 2023, they remain the cooler. They cannot appoint a minister of government. They cannot appoint anybody. So except the government that won the election is generous and extend hands of praise, that one also is diminishing. That's where people are looking for the best. It should change. It's what is driving our madness. And, the desperado of politicians. It's too much. Because if a party that lost narrowly at the state had to be in the cooler, that's frozen of work. Everything is frozen. You cannot, even employment in the public sector, you might not be able to, nothing will be considered to you. But if I win 30% of the parliamentary seats, and I'm able to appoint 30% of the board of parastatals.
That's proportional representation.
Proportion, something like that, close to that. Then I will say, okay, you just have 4 years, let me wait. But if I know I have 4 years of waiting on nothing, of starvation, then I will do everything to make sure the system is done. Look, some of the security challenges we have, we know people, from what we know people are bringing people who are well located within the state.
That's food for thought there. Professor Leia, the former National Commissioner for INEC, thank you very much for your time today.
It's my pleasure.
All right, let's take a look at some messages, can we?
Well, unfortunately, we're not able to do that today.
Oh,
Maybe
my
we'll do that
word.
tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay. So there you go. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves on that.
Thoroughly. Is, I always call this, and I don't know if Marco will agree with me, the political education. So we just need this to have a general understanding. We talk about young people all the time, but there is a need for them also to have a good understanding of what's on ground. And I think today's program from the beginning until now has given us an idea of that. Yeah. Marco, what do you think?
Nakwa should come on board.
I guess we expected no less from a professor who has practical experience in electoral matters.
Yeah.
But I hope that our viewers are patient enough to watch today and learn, from his wealth of experience and knowledge. Well, I think that's where we have to call it a wrap. We indeed apologize that we're not able to take meals today. And hopefully, in the course of the day, we will be able to get across to our political editor, Seun Okinbaloye, to give us an update. And we understand they're on their way to Ihiala, and it's been a bit difficult for them to stop along the way to be able to do the live link with us. But hopefully, in the course of the day, that should be happening. Well, we have to thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusu.
Well, it definitely is not a sightseeing event that he's gone to his work, so he's got to get to it. I'm Ayo Makide. Stay with us here.
I'm Chamberlain, sir. Goodbye.